Welcome to week 6 of second grade e-learning. This week's learning will focus on partitioning rectangles and circles into halves, thirds, and fourths. The 3 steps for this week's learning are shown. In second grade, students do not write fractions with numbers and symbols. That learning will take place in grade 3. Make sure your child feels comfortable with the learning in step 1 before moving on to step 2, and comfortable with step 2 before progressing to step 3. In step 1, students will partition squares, rectangles, and circles into halves and fourths. This is similar to what they experienced with their first grade standards. In the center for step 1, students will cut apart the boxes and sort the shapes into 3 categories: shapes that have been partitioned into equal halves, shapes that have been partitioned into equal fourths, and shapes that do not show equal parts. In step 2, students will partition rectangles and circles into halves, thirds, and fourths. Thirds is new learning in second grade. When partitioning a circle, your child should start at the center and make straight lines to the edge. Students should also understand that there are 2 halves in a whole, 3 thirds in one whole, or 4 fourths in a whole. Be sure to use the Bounce Pages app with the Visual Learning Bridge page for a short animated lesson. The game for this step is called Follow the Fraction Path. On a player's turn, they draw a card. They then move to the next available space with that fractional amount. In the example shown, the card shows 3 thirds, and the yellow player moves to the next space that says 3 thirds. In the final step, students will decompose squares and rectangles into pieces that have the same area but don't look the same. In the examples shown, all 4 pieces take up the same amount of space in each square. Each piece is a fourth, and each whole is made up of 4 fourths. The game for this step is called fraction squares. On a player's turn, they draw a card and shade that amount on one of the squares. In the example shown, the purple player draws thirds and shades 1 third on a square with his color. Then the blue player draws halves and shades 1 half on a new square since he doesn't have any halves colored yet. The purple player draws fourths and shades 1 fourth on his square that already has 2 fourth size pieces colored. The goal is to complete as many squares as possible. To practice using the new learning in real life, let your child, with supervision, cut their lunch sandwich into 2, 3, or 4 equal pieces. If you have Play-Doh at home, make shapes and use a plastic knife to cut the shapes into halves, thirds, or fourths. Each time, name the pieces as halves, thirds, or fourths, and tell how many of those pieces make the whole. Also included in this week's packet is a fluency game. This week, students will be working with their basic addition facts. The game shown is already in play. It is the red player's turn. They roll a 4 and a 2 and write 4 plus 2 equals 6 on their paper. They move one of their counters to the sum of 6 space and bump the yellow player off of that square. The yellow player rolls a 6 and a 5 and writes the equation 6 plus 5 equals 11. They move one of their counters to the sum of 11 space, and since it is the second yellow counter on that space, the space is now frozen and no one else may play on that space. For the remainder of this game, if anyone rolls a sum of 11, 7, or 8 during the remainder, they lose their turn. The winner is the first player to use all of their color counters on the board. Remember to visit SmathSmarts.com for helpful information and videos. It is updated daily. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter for the latest updates to the website. Have a great week of e-learning.